What's going on, Internet? My name is Eric, and welcome to another First Thing in the Morning Q&A video. Now, I put out the broski signal in the sky for more questions to make another one of these Q&A videos because they were really fun last time. And boy, did you guys answer. So without further ado, let's get into them. I might cut this up into a couple videos so to keep them shorter and keep them more watchable. So if I didn't get to your question today, don't worry, I'll get to it later this week. Alright, so without further ado, it's question time! Alright, so since the questions basically fit into two different categories, gaming and wrestling, I'm just going to read them in the order that I received them, because I'm lazy. Alright, so our first question comes from Canvas Theory. Go follow them at Canvas Theory and check out their podcast. Great stuff. He wants to know what my favorite match of all time was. Now, the last time in the wrestling Q&A, I said that my favorite match of all time was Brett versus Owen. Now this time, because I have more than one favorite match, because I'm allowed to, I'm going to pick Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 14. The reason being is that WrestleMania is always kind of around my birthday, and that year my best friend begged his mom to order the pay-per-view for me, and I went over to his house. We had chicken and ribs. It was fantastic, and then later on that night, I got to watch my childhood hero, Stone Cold Steve Austin, finally win the WWF Championship. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had a big bowl of popcorn on my lap. Tyson counted the 3, and the popcorn went everywhere. So that is definitely one of my favorite matches of all time. Maybe not for the wrestling, but for everything that was around it. I was really looking forward to the WrestleMania. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been my first WrestleMania that I saw live. I'd seen every WrestleMania at that point, but it was always on tape. Remember VHS? So it was really cool for me to be able to watch it live and to see my favorite wrestler, my childhood hero, Stone Cold Steve Austin, finally win the championship. So that is going to be my second favorite match of all time. Next up, we have my broski and First Thing in the Morning's #1 fan at Rocky Baya on Twitter. Go give him a follow. If you're not following him, do so. And if you are following him, make a second account and then follow him again. Sorry. Alright, so he wants to know, he says recently he's noticed that Minecraft has been really over in the past couple of years. It's been a very popular game and a lot of people play it. Just watch YouTube for 2 seconds and you'll find that out. And he said about a decade earlier, The Sims was the game that kind of got over as the casual game that pretty much everybody plays. And Rocky wants to know, which game do I think is going to be the next Minecraft or the next Sims game? Recently on Steam, there's been a game that has really been taking the community by storm, myself included. It's not something that I ever thought I would play, but it turns out that it's really fun. It's called Stardew Valley. Now, if you ever played Harvest Moon, which is like a farming sim, it's kind of like that, but it has some extra layers. You got the basic farming mechanic where you got to grow different crops and sell them at market to make money, upgrade your house, get new barns, etc. But they also have this almost dungeon crawler type of element where you go into the mines to mine. But there's all these enemies, and you can pick up weapons and armor and little trinkets to help you on your way. So it's really cool, and each season is a little bit different. There's different events every season. You basically, one day is from when you wake up to when you go to bed, and you go through 28 days. I think all 4 months have 28 days. And then you go through it, and then at the end of your 2-year anniversary, I think it's your uncle or something, or maybe your grandfather. I haven't gotten there yet. He comes back and he gives you a rating, and I think that's kind of how you base your score. It's constantly in development, and what's even more mind-boggling, especially if you played this game, it's all done by one guy. The graphics, the music, the coding, everything is done by one dude. So that is the game that I think is really going to take off. I think it's already at like 400,000 units sold, which for a little indie game that one guy put out on Steam is fantastic. If you haven't checked out Stardew Valley, I highly recommend it. Alright, up next we got my Canadian broski, Pete. Now Pete, your Twitter handle is your last name, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So instead of dishonoring you, sir, and saying your last name wrong, I'm just going to leave your Twitter handle extra long on the screen, so that way people can follow you. Alright, go follow Pete. Alright, also, be sure to check out Melancholy Hill, which is a fantastic and honest blog. I highly recommend it. I've read every single article that's been put up there because they're well written, they're concise, and you might learn a thing or two. Also, pretty soon, be sure to check out his Millennial's Guide to Food. Now, Broski likes to eat, so I'll be definitely checking that out, and I highly recommend that you do as well. He posts pictures of the stuff he makes on his Instagram, and it looks delicious. So check it out. All right, he wants to know the first match I've ever seen live. Oh, geez. It's definitely a WWE match. God, I can't exactly remember because it was a long, long time ago at this point. But I think the first match I remember seeing live, here you go, that's what I'll give you. The first match I remember seeing live was PCO, Pierre-Carl Ouellet, there you go, a little French for you, versus Bret the Hitman Hart at a house show. Now see, house shows back then weren't like they were today. On house shows, now you get everybody. You get the guys you see on TV, but back then you got a bunch of jobbers and you'd see one or two major stars and the rest was pretty much the mid-card. So seeing Bret on the card at the time was incredible, and I still remember it. I was like maybe 9 or 10 years old when it happened, when I went to my first WWE show. So that's like 22 years ago, so that's the best that's the best that I can answer that question. So Bret Hart versus PCO at the Old Montreal Forum. He continues with my first game I've ever played. That's easy. That was Donkey Kong on the original NES. I played it at my neighbor's house, who was an adult. It wasn't a kid. He was an adult. But he babysat me sometimes, and as soon as I had that controller in my hand, I knew it was meant to be. So it was Donkey Kong on the original Nintendo. And finally, am I going to do a Pong episode? Well, I think you've asked me like 3 or 4 times now, and although I think it'll be an incredibly dull episode, Pete, you've always been a good friend to me, so I will make you your Pong episode, and I will dedicate it just to you. Thanks for your questions, bud. Up next, we have a contender for Rocky's crown here with Phenom Frank. And I quote, "You, sir, are a fucking joke. You and your show. Have fun looking like an idiot. I got a question for you. Question mark. What's it like being a loser?" See, this confused me because I wasn't sure if he was asking me if he had a question for me, because after he said I got a question for you, he used the question mark. So I guess you do have a question for me, and it's, what's it like being a loser? Well, you know, at first it was hard. You know, I wasn't used to eating alone in cafeterias at school. But eventually, like all things in life, you get used to it. So, to answer your question, what's it like being a loser? When you're me, it's fucking awesome, bro. Thanks for your question. You're the nicest person I know on the internet. Up next, we have at WWE Maria Hugs _ future WWE Women's Champion, so keep an eye out for her. She wants to know favorite childhood game. My God, how much time do you have? I spent pretty much my entire childhood playing different types of video games. If I had to just pick one, probably Earthbound for the Super Nintendo. For one, it's a very long game. 2, it's really quirky, it's really weird, and it's pretty much unlike anything else on the Super Nintendo. And it's just a fun story. I've always, from the second I picked it up, it felt so different and so weird, and there's humor in it. And the enemies can range from so many different things that you don't see in other video games. So if I had to just pick one game from my childhood that to bring with me forever into the future, it would definitely be Earthbound. Alright guys, so that was part 1 of my 3-part Q&A. Thanks to everybody who asked me a question. I really appreciate it, and you guys killed it this time. Now tomorrow, you're really going to want to tune in tomorrow, because all my questions tomorrow are from my beloved social media wife. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at MTLBroski. Go give the Facebook fan page a like at facebook.com/FTitM. And as always, be good to each other. Don't be assholes online when you're gaming. And check back tomorrow for part 2 of First Thing in the Morning's Q&A.